Spike Milligan was a man of contradictions, a brilliant mind often engulfed in darkness, a comedic genius who danced on the edge of insanity, and a creative force whose life was as chaotic as his humor. To understand Milligan is to venture into a world where laughter and sorrow coexist, where the boundaries between reality and absurdity blur. Born Terence Allen Milligan on April 16, 1918, in the British garrison town of Ahmednagar, India, Spike's early years were a mosaic of cultures, landscapes, and experiences that would later fuel his unique brand of humor. His father, an Irishman serving in the British Army, and his mother, of English descent, provided a somewhat unsteady but loving home. Young Spike was a sensitive child, prone to daydreaming, with an imagination that often ran wild. Growing up in India, Milligan was exposed to the vibrant chaos of the subcontinent, a place where the surreal seemed almost commonplace. This early exposure to the absurdities of colonial life left an indelible mark on him. His family moved frequently, from India to Rangoon and then to England, where they settled in the multicultural neighbourhood of Brockley, South London. Spike's school years were turbulent. He was a mischievous child, often at odds with the rigid structures of British schooling. His rebellious nature found an outlet in music and comedy, two passions that would define his life. Playing the trumpet and crafting jokes became his refuge, a way to escape the mundanity and harsh realities of life in a post-war world. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 saw Milligan enlisted in the Royal Artillery, a decision that would change his life in ways he could never have imagined. The war was a crucible that forged his comedic talents, but it also sowed the seeds of the mental health struggles that would plague him for the rest of his life. Stationed in North Africa and later in Italy, Milligan was thrust into the heart of the conflict. The horrors of war were overwhelming, but Milligan, ever the joker, found ways to keep his fellow soldiers' spirits high. He formed impromptu bands, wrote skits, and used humor as a shield against the relentless brutality of the battlefield. However, the strain of constant danger and the loss of close comrades eventually took its toll. In 1944, during the Battle of Monte Cassino, Milligan suffered a nervous breakdown after being injured in an artillery barrage. This marked the beginning of a lifelong battle with mental illness, a struggle that he would often confront through his work. He was invalided out of the army and spent several months recovering, during which time he began to write about his experiences, a therapeutic exercise that would later become the foundation of his celebrated war memoirs. After the war, Milligan returned to England, determined to make a career in entertainment. He played trumpet in various jazz bands, but it was his comedic writing that caught the attention of producers. His big break came when he teamed up with Peter Sellers, Harry Seacombe, and Michael Bendine to create The Goon Show in 1951. The show was unlike anything the British public had heard before, an anarchic, surreal, and often nonsensical comedy that shattered the conventions of traditional radio. The Goon Show became a phenomenon, running for nearly a decade and making household names of its stars. Milligan was the creative engine behind the show, writing most of the scripts and injecting them with his trademark absurdity. The characters he created, like the hapless Eccles and the bombastic Major Bloodknock, became icons of British comedy. But the success of The Goon Show came at a price. The pressure to produce consistently innovative material, combined with Milligan's underlying mental health issues, led to multiple breakdowns. He would later describe this period as one of the most difficult of his life, a time when the lines between reality and the fantastical world he created for the show began to blur. His manic episodes were often followed by deep depressions, a cycle that would continue throughout his life. Spike Milligan's battle with mental illness was as much a part of his life as his comedy. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder, Milligan's mood swung between the euphoria of manic episodes and the despair of depression. These extreme emotional states fueled his creativity but also led to periods of profound suffering. Milligan was painfully aware of the connection between his mental health and his work. He often used his experiences as fodder for his humor, confronting his demons through the lens of comedy. This candidness about his struggles was rare at a time when mental illness was a taboo subject. Milligan's willingness to expose his vulnerabilities made him a pioneer in using comedy as a form of catharsis and a means of addressing serious issues. His personal life, however, was far from stable. He was married 3 times, with each marriage marred by his erratic behavior and mood swings. His relationships with his 6 children were complicated, often strained by his unpredictable temper and bouts of depression. Despite these challenges, Milligan's love for his family was undeniable, and they remained a constant source of support throughout his life. While The Goon Show remains Spike Milligan's most famous work, his talents extended far beyond radio comedy. He was a prolific writer, penning over 50 books, including novels, poetry, children's books, and his acclaimed war memoirs. His writing was characterized by the same surreal humor that defined his comedy, often blending the absurd with the poignant. Milligan's war memoirs, starting with Adolf Hitler, My Part in His Downfall, 1971, are perhaps his most personal works. They offer a candid, often humorous account of his wartime experiences, but they also reveal the deep scars left by the conflict. These books were a critical success, praised for their honesty and the way they juxtapose the horrors of war with Milligan's irrepressible wit. In addition to his literary work, Milligan made numerous appearances on television, both as a performer and a writer. His television series, such as Q and The World of Beachcomber, pushed the boundaries of conventional comedy, often baffling audiences with their offbeat, avant-garde style. These shows, while not as universally popular as The Goon Show, further cemented Milligan's reputation as a comedic innovator. In his later years, Spike Milligan became increasingly involved in activism, particularly in environmental causes. A passionate advocate for wildlife conservation, he used his fame to raise awareness about issues such as habitat destruction and animal rights. His love for nature was evident in his poetry and his work with various environmental organizations. Milligan was also a fierce critic of social and political issues, often using his platform to speak out against injustices. His sharp tongue and acerbic wit made him a formidable opponent of complacency and hypocrisy. However, his outspoken nature sometimes led to controversy, particularly when his humor crossed into areas that were seen as politically incorrect. Despite his declining health, Milligan continued to write and perform well into his 70s. His later works, such as his final poetry collections and television appearances, were tinged with a sense of nostalgia and reflection, as if he were taking stock of his life and legacy. These years were marked by a quieter, more introspective side of Milligan, but the spark of mischief and rebellion never fully left him. As the 1990s progressed, Spike Milligan's health began to deteriorate. He suffered a series of strokes, which left him physically weakened and further exacerbated his mental health issues. Despite these challenges, he remained active, continuing to write and make occasional public appearances. Milligan's final years were marked by a sense of acceptance and resignation. He often joked about his mortality, quipping that he was dying of old age and that he hoped to be remembered as someone who made people laugh. His humor remained intact, even as his body and mind began to fail him. On February 27, 2002, Spike Milligan passed away at the age of 83. His death was met with an outpouring of tributes from fans and fellow comedians alike, all of whom recognized the profound impact he had on the world of comedy. True to his irreverent spirit, Milligan had the epitaph "I told you I was ill" inscribed on his tombstone in Irish Gaelic, a final joke that perfectly encapsulated his approach to life.